The Gaza Strip is engulfed again in devastation following the breakdown of the ceasefire just a few days ago, when Israel launched a renewed offensive, striking deep into Khan Yunis, into Rafah, into central Gaza, and the Israeli military claims precision targeting of Hamas political and military leaders, individuals such as Ismail Bahoum and Salah al-Badawil. These strikes have levelled homes, refugee tents, hospitals, and the death toll has surpassed 50,000 Palestinians, the majority women and children. And the scale of suffering is monumental, and the international response splintered and slow. In this combustible context re-emerges the familiar idea, one that recalls mid-century population transfers cloaked in the language of voluntary migration. And during a recent Israeli cabinet meeting on Saturday, Defense Minister Israel Katz announced the creation of an official office within the Defense Ministry to coordinate the voluntary relocation of Gaza residents, and the office's remit to identify willing states and coordinate their transit by land, sea or air. In Katz's words, this aligns with the vision of US President Donald Trump. Indeed, this isn't new. Trump and his Middle East advisors, particularly Jared Kushner, have pushed for a regional resettlement plan for Palestinians that would in effect circumvent the right of return. Countries such as Egypt, Jordan, even Latin American states were quietly approached. None have agreed. And Trump's so-called deal of the century was widely criticized for treating the Palestinian people as a global problem to be solved administratively, not as a nation with inalienable rights. And what is now being proposed is not so much a policy as a proposition that a besieged population should leave voluntarily, one is told, and start anew somewhere else. This would not be merely a humanitarian corridor, it would be a demographic erasure. It would turn the consequences of war into a fait accompli. The notion that Palestinians can be redistributed like surplus cargo to a third-party nation raises grave legal and moral questions, and certainly constitutes the closest that we've come to so far of a genocide. According to international humanitarian law, particularly the Geneva Conventions, population transfers under occupation are problematic, even when initiated by the occupying power, or especially when initiated by the occupying power. The International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice are already investigating Israeli conduct in Gaza under the shadow of accusations of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and even genocide. And yet the idea persists, resettlement as a euphemism for displacement. It seduces policymakers with its promise of finality. No more conflict over land, water, sovereignty, no more return. The problem is offloaded. And this, of course, is fantasy masquerading as realpolitik. Palestinians are not chess pieces. They have identities, claims, histories, rights. Moreover, the idea that third-party nations would take in tens or hundreds of thousands of Gazans, people traumatized by war, often lacking documentation and bearing deep mistrust of outside powers, is optimistic at best, delusional at worst. What incentives would such countries have? What infrastructure would be built? What status would these people have? Citizenship, residency, stateless limbo? Would they be kept in hotels? And let's not be naive about the optics. The backdrop here includes strikes on hospitals, treating the wounded, the deaths of physicians, the collapse of civil infrastructure, the systematic targeting of senior Hamas officials, many of whom by international law are not legitimate military targets unless they directly engage in hostilities. The assassination of officials while they sleep in tents alongside their wives is hardly a clean surgical strike. So what are we left with? A policy of military escalation paired with a diplomatic vision of removal. A global theatre where bombs fall at night and offices of migration open by day. It's a Kafkaesque model in its cruelty. Destroy people's homes and then offer them a ticket abroad, voluntarily, of course. This isn't a peace plan. It's a plan for managing the consequences of protracted violence with bureaucratic tools. It's a displacement dressed up as diplomacy, and it cannot be allowed to succeed under the banner of volunteerism. For genuine peace, the future of Gaza must be decided with Palestinians at the centre, not as subjects to be relocated, but as a people to be heard.